What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com. Here are my DFS picks for NBA playoffs. Saturday, June 5th. These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our new videos. In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for today's NBA slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, tonight we have an NBA showdown between the Milwaukee Bucks and the Brooklyn Nets. So let's take a look at the point guard position. I like Kyrie Irving from the Brooklyn Nets playing the Milwaukee Bucks, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they're middle-of-the-pack defending opposing point guards. Kyrie Irving has averaged 45.5 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 35 minutes per game with a 31% usage rate. He scored 36, 60, and 28 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 37, 40, and 40 minutes. He's projected at 46.3 fantasy points here tonight. Now, you're going to get Kyrie Irving at a discount compared to guys like Kevin Durant and James Harden, but he's more of a tournament play because he's much more volatile. He's got a much lower floor. He doesn't have a higher ceiling, but a higher ceiling for his price point. So I think he makes a pretty decent tournament play if you're fishing for that 50 to 60 fantasy point upside and trying to save some salary. So I like Kyrie Irving here versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Another point guard that I like is Jrue Holiday from the Milwaukee Bucks playing the Brooklyn Nets, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. Although they've been pretty good versus opposing point guards, Jrue Holiday has averaged 36.9 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 32 minutes per game with a 22% usage rate. He scored 41, 39, and 46 fantasy points in his last 3 games, playing 38, 33, and 30 minutes. He's projected at 39.2 fantasy points here tonight. So I think he's more of a consistent play here. So I like Jrue Holiday here versus the Brooklyn Nets. Now, if you're looking to save some salary, you got to fit in some of these lower salary players to even out your lineup so you can get those studs in there. So take a look at Bryn Forbes from the Milwaukee Bucks. He scored 24, 18, and 26 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 25, 20, and 19 minutes. So I like that he played 25 minutes last game, and he's been doing pretty well the last 3 games, playing 20 minutes or more in each of those games, and he's projected at 22 fantasy points here tonight. So if you're looking for one of those lower salary players, take a look at Bryn Forbes here versus the Brooklyn Nets. Okay, let's take a look at the shooting guard position. Of course, we got James Harden from the Brooklyn Nets playing the Milwaukee Bucks, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they give up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing shooting guards. James Harden has averaged 52.1 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 37 minutes per game with a 29% usage rate. He scored 72, 65, and 65 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 39, 40, and 39 minutes. So he's playing monster minutes. His ceiling is through the roof. He's projected at 58 fantasy points here tonight. So I like James Harden here versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, if you're looking for a lower salary player that's got some upside here, take a look at Bruce Brown from the Brooklyn Nets. He averaged 20.8 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 22 minutes per game with a 16% usage rate, and he scored 31, 27, and 9 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 23, 23, and 14 minutes. So I like that he played 23 minutes a game the last two games, scoring 31 and 27 fantasy points. That's fantastic for his price point. He's projected at 25 fantasy points here tonight. So I like Bruce Brown here versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Okay, let's take a look at the small forward position. I like Kevin Durant from the Brooklyn Nets. He's averaging 46.3 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 33 minutes per game with a 31% usage rate. He scored 40, 62, and 63 fantasy points in the last three games, playing 37, 39, and 40 minutes. He's projected at 52 fantasy points here tonight, so I like Kevin Durant, who's got a good matchup here tonight. The Bucks give up the 10th most fantasy points to opposing small forwards, so I like that. So I like Kevin Durant here versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Okay, another small forward that I like is Chris Middleton from the Milwaukee Bucks. He has scored 36.7 fantasy points per game on the season. He's been pretty consistent throughout the season. Let's take a look at his last five real quick. Pretty consistent throughout the playoffs, although he did put in a 20 fantasy point game a few games ago, but he scored 35, 35, and 20 fantasy points in the last three games, playing 36, 33, and 24 minutes. He's projected at 37.4 fantasy points here tonight, so I like Chris Middleton here versus the Brooklyn Nets. Okay, everyone, it's time to announce the winner of our $100 weekly PayPal giveaway. The winner is Bob Rupp. Bob Rupp, congratulations. You are the winner of this week's $100 PayPal giveaway. Please reply to our comment to collect your prize. Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports. You can try the Position Optimizer, where you can see the top players ranked for each position. And we added a new Player Trends tool, where you can see the top salary differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. It's a really good tool to help you pick out value for the site that you're playing on. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups. Okay, now this next pick that I'm going to give you here, I don't really know what to think about this pick, but I'm going to go through my thought process here. So, I don't like his salary on FanDuel. I think it's a little bit too expensive for the fantasy points that he's been scoring the past few games. But take a look at Joe Harris. He's averaged 23 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 31 minutes per game with a 16% usage rate. So he's only scored 22, 23, and 12 fantasy points in the last three games. But the reason I like this pick, this is a tournament play only, is because he's playing 35, 37, and 35 minutes in the last three games. So he's playing a ton of minutes, and you're probably going to get him at low ownership here because he really hasn't played that well. On the last 5 games that he's played in the playoffs, he scored 22, 23, 12, 42, and 13. So you're fishing for one of those games that he gets hot shooting and he drops one of those 35 plus fantasy point games, and he could find himself in the winning lineup if that happens. Granted, you got like a 20% chance of that happening. That's why he's a tournament play only, but he's playing enough minutes where if he gets hot, he can rack up those fantasy points, pay off his salary, and find himself in the winning lineup. So I like Joe Harris as a tournament play only here versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Okay, let's take a look at the power forward position. I like Giannis Ananacupo from the Milwaukee Bucks. He's averaged 53.9 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 33 minutes per game with a 33% usage rate. He scored 61, 45, and 66 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 36, 32, and 30 minutes. He's projected at 56.4 fantasy points here tonight, and I like this pick because he scored 54, 76, and 64 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Nets. So I like Giannis Ananacupo here versus the Brooklyn Nets. Okay, now I got another low salary play for you. I think it's a decent play here for his price point. He's a good point per minute player, but he's not playing a ton of minutes, so it kind of limits his upside, but his price is low enough where he can hit value and be a quality play in your lineup. So take a look at Bobby Portis from the Milwaukee Bucks. He's averaged 24.2 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 21 minutes per game with a 21% usage rate. He scored 18, 21, and 22 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 18, 17, and 17 minutes. So I'd like to see him playing 20 minutes or more to give him more upside, but he can easily score 20 and 24 fantasy points in those minutes and get value and become a valuable part of your lineup here tonight because his salary is low. He's projected at 22.2 fantasy points here tonight. So I like Bobby Portis as a high risk, high reward play here versus the Brooklyn Nets. Okay, moving on to the center position. I think this guy is a little bit overpriced, but he did have a big game last game. So take a look at Brooke Lopez from the Milwaukee Bucks. He's averaged 24.5 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 27 minutes per game with a 17% usage rate. He scored 39, 22, and 16 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 27, 26, and 23 minutes. He's projected at 28 fantasy points here tonight. And the one encouraging thing about this pick is that he scored 16, 27, 31, and 40 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Nets. So 3 out of his last 4 games versus Brooklyn have been pretty awesome. So I think that makes him somewhat interesting here. So I like Brooke Lopez as a high risk, high reward play here versus the Brooklyn Nets.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smiggity smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.